Continuing Chapter 4, Arc Welding of the Haynes Manual. Types of joints. After you experience making the straight beads on the plates lying flat in front of you, begin the practice on between the two pieces. The simple is to learn one bolt on butt. Learn on our butt joints. If the bolt and parts of the before welding with it. When parts of the welding add either ferrous, non-ferrous cleanliness for the work is very important. Making the sound weld as sound with the grind of the piece of the joint, but not just beveled, but at least 1/2 inch either side of the joint, and so impurities do not contain the weld. Most seem to start from tacking parts together at either end, perhaps several pieces along the way, and depending on how long the seam is, because of the growth of these parts, the heat of the weld may need to build up the gap between them and the tearing, tacking the face. Some of the welders will place electrical pieces of bare copper wire between the two parts of tacking, one on the end of the other, with the wire spacer to where the next tack will be, continuing so that two parts are tacked together slightly apart, but together each of the other with an even gap as well as when you build up the seam, the parts will grow together when you ever mention the tack welding conjunction arc welding. Remember that the slag must be chipped and the wire brushes are away from the tackles before you connect the dots with the continuous weld. Depending on the thickness of the material working on which you may make two pass welds on the top of the one or the bottom. This weld only with fusible plates not on the piping and the tubing, but make with very strong joint with the opposing force. The distortion may keep the part of the flattering than if you made only one large pass on one side. Looking at the end of the view on the plates, the first pass should be go into the joint a little bit more than halfway. Then a second weld to the other side of the joint should bite in the first bead of the completely welded joint. Usually, such as joint do not require higher amperage setting of the welder is making the single pass weld. One of the most common use of the arc welding equipment is farming the branching where the equipment being repaired is usually too large to bring it into the shop. The machine of the most welding requires bolts and shields, gas most susceptible to wind and be effective for the arc welding process advantages. Also, most of the farm equipment is rather heavy to be larger component of the arc welding ability to fill the larger brakes and mold, casting. Deposit large quality of the filler metal with the meat that makes the arc weld a good choice. The visibility, beauty of the weld is seldom in factor for the agricultural repairs. So generally, it's getting equipment back to the several service accounts, building up the worn agricultural parts of the common task of the welder makes repeated beads on them right next to each other to literally build a new high surface of the part. Work is tedious but not necessary. Alright, 422. Here a 1/2 inch plate with the side was welded with one pass. The gap was left on 1 inch, where the 1 inch below the lower plates of the bigger plates were welded in several plate paths. But the strength was improved and the joint starts all the way at the ends. 423. At the outside of the corner weld, the 5/16 of an inch was made one path of the wide weaving patterns spread equally and on both parts. Generally, you must make the first pass of the normal welding mode to make the succeeding phase of the electrode to help the slightly slide angle of the work of the work with the arc welding. And the hot filter metal is virtually sprayed off the end of the work rod of the spray like gun. You aim at the rod with where the metal will be deposited. The slight slide of the angle allows the succeeding path of the bite slightly into the previous bead. Alternatively, direction beads overlap about 1/3 of the bead width. Though there are even special rods made with the deposit of the hard facing of the metal, there can be used renew, creating the hard cutting the edge of the more part, which can be later ground with the filled with the edge of the which to stay sharper and larger than the parent metal. When making any kind of the build-up wedge, each of the beads must be chipped clean before the next pass. Slag and impurities could be trapped in the next bead, also aware they're building up of the part rather than fusing the seam. As in regular welding, you can run a bead much wider than what we have suggested so far. The idea is not to fuse the two parts of the composite mesh metal as possible, but the surface in these cases you can weave the rod tip of the back and then forth the zigzag other pattern that can be made wider bead. You will find out the position of the welds. Welds are not made with the parts lying in front of you. The welding table. They're tough to learn with the corner joints. Vertical seams, overhead seams, the increased level of the challenge of the corner joints, the commonly found with the joining of the two plates where one plate is perpendicular to the other like a T. Electrode shall be a 45-degree angle between the two parts so the equal heat of the filler metal is directed onto the both places. In some cases, you will find that the place for the arc, such as the puts more than heat on the bottom plate where it's dissipating more heat with the joint while aiming electrode spray and move the upper plate to avoid the undercutting in which you will see slightly crevices along one and both edges of the welded joint after you chip the slag away. 424. The sample of the weld shows how large joint plates are multiplied passes and large rods compared to the front view of the right, while the welds began to cut away the photo of the left, and will illustrate how to integrate the free contaminations. Even such a large weld can be welded. Alright, if you're joining heavy plate the field welder, we weld make the three phase for the which for the case for the first beam, put the right in the corner of the second half of the long side of the which one with the electrode aimed at the spray light slightly more than toward the side of between the weld between the bead and the corner edge. The end the first pass of the aim the opposite side of the center. On the other hand, we are weld thick plate with the thinner one, but the favor over the electrode toward the heavier plate, give it more heat. In practice, in such welds, it makes it advantageous to use the plates only an inch or 2 by 6 inches. This will make for levels of work, and when cutting the cross section through afterwards, examining your weld for penetration, lack of voids and impurities, especially if you have a hand hacksaw them. While basic flat butt joints are most common, the typical home shop project with the T and fill the joint, the lap of the joint must make the manager weak with the industry instruction. To the lap of the joint where one plate lay on top of another is an approach much like the T joint when an electrode angle is 45 degrees aimed to the inside with the correct. Where the two plates are meet, the different thickness of the electrode may be needed to be aimed to give more than heat than a heavier piece for the heavier piece. Another difference between the industry and home projects will be that you will seldom encounter the joints require more than one pass to complete in home shop the project. Use the real thick plates just in common with the automotive art crafts making shop equipment, while possible exception for the building engine stand, which might have the half-inch plate welded with the tube and part with the engine holding arms to it. The one reason the arc welding isn't common anymore, the home shop tool, is our methods are so much seem better than suited with the thinner metal that can accompany for the hobby project through equipment repair and sometimes require large-scale abilities for the arc welders. All right, choosing the electrode. Your home AC welder. OEC arc welder will probably come with an assortment of basic welding rounds practices after you will have the shop of the local welding supply and order catalog. You should have a good idea of what type of thickness you will be working with, and thus the size and type of the rods. Your local supplier should be able to give you with good advice best suits your purpose. As you read the talk and talk with other people the arc welding, you may hear the rods termed any of the following: stinger, rod, electrode, or stick. This means all the same thing. While there's confusing array with the arc welding electrodes on the market for the local, specifically designed with the industrial other specifically specialty usages, you will never have to call them these. Perhaps they have the dozen rods that would cover over the need. The rod differs with the type of the rod, center metal work. Wire is made in thickness for the composition coating of the flux, as well as the actual use of the flux burns at a way slower rate with the rod inside. This makes the sword of the collar around the top of the rod with the further shielding of the welding process, helping concentrate the direct spray of the metal coming off of the wire. Many of the hundreds of special purpose rods is named strictly with the professional DC welders, so you won't have to worry about them without those. If you use the typical 220 volt home AC welder, you need perhaps three types we will use most. Of these is the Electrode 6011, which is designated for the most commonly used electrode. One of the easiest beginner methods use the AC/DC virtually. Use all position of the weld can be used in a situation from the parent metal that has been prepared spotlessly, and main drawback is the procedure for the lots of flare, where appearance of the weld is less important than ability to make a strong joint of the rough and dirty materials, such as farm equipment repairs. This is good choice. After practicing with one, you may want to move on to one more sophisticated electrodes E6013. Rods work greater in many situations, although the required better surface penetration clean with the 6011 rod. It would produce much better looking welds and suitable variety of position handles metals up to 3/16 of an inch thick. Most home type buzz boxes can be used for lots of project building shop equipment. There is even variation of the rod, different manufacturers. Their specialty, specifically sheet metal work inside the down with the 1/16. The side of the welding is mentioned refer to the diameter of the wire inside of the. Obviously, the flux coating makes the rod appear much thicker, and if you need to check the rod, measure the bare and meant to go in the electrical holder. There has been a variety of methods used in the past to identify the welding rounds, include the number of the color code for the most rod today with the number of the code for the manufacturer, as well as the standard AWS number E613 and the illustration. The standard designation. All right. Some of the electro rods metal the wire that faster than wire faster rate than flux, leaving the wire receding inside. During the welding, this makes most of the concentrated arc spray. When restriking the arc with such a rod, the extra flux around the tip of the broken off the gold fingers and pliers of the rod cooled off and exposed the metal of the restriking area. You find the wide variety of electrodes at the welding supply store with only a few rods to really use for the normal home shop project without mild steel. Don't buy much more than you need to do not buy much more than you need for your next project. These standards designate the common American Welding Society should be easy to find somewhere over the box of the rod you buy. The CE standard stands for the electrode for arc welding. 60 parts multiplied by 1,000 gives you a tensile strength of the wire 60,000 psi. Next digit of the code is the type of the position of the rod recommended for. Last digit refers to the next digit code recommended for the last digit type of polarity for the current required. 1 is an example of the position spot indicates the rod's good in all positions. 2 would mean flat position. Last number indicates the rod can be used with the AC DC. The DC can be used with the straight reverse polarity through the straight polarity and seldom used. Another good rod starting out the E7 is the E7014, or which would be like higher the strength, produce the greater locking beads. It is E63 one mentioned after they require a little different a arc procedure than described here before. Contact rods because instead of maintaining a basic 1/8 of an inch gap, you also go along and just keep the tipping adjust the contact material metal to the center for the dragging rod lightly along the seam. Alright, special purpose of the rod, you have the repairing cast iron such as the automotive block, brake head, the transmission cable, the various farm equipment, the EST, although there's several brand names that trade with the casting of the iron rod mace. Most of the rod is come purpose to have nickel content. Although these rods are available, that doesn't mean the cast iron welding is easy. Any cast part should be thoroughly preheated to 400 degrees or better to prevent cracking after the localized heating of the welding is induced in the part. Parts, depending on the size, can be heated with the oven on the rosebud tip of the auxiliary torch using temperature indicating points to tell when you have the evenly heated proper temperature. Even there can be cracking problems. It can be very difficult to get cracked cast iron through the clean before welding. Welding usually require the deep V or making good repair. Better success for the cast may be the head been welding the short tip that's 1/2 to 3/4 inch long. With the part clean, with allowed to cool off between the automotive and use the broken cast iron exhaust manifolds are common repair items. High nickel rods can be used successfully as well as exhaust manifolds and either sandblast inside or out of the beforehand. Get rid of the most carbon baked of the pores of the casting possibility. Usually a brand new casting will take much longer lasting weld, such as when modifying the manifolds as at the turbocharged flame. Most small cast iron repairs may be made before better brazing than auxiliary torch when much less than introduced, and although part still pre-treated. Alright, you can see on this one, this is the bare end of the rod. It fits into the electrode holder with the judge side of the rod is in the bare end. Does not measure the flux core rod end of the marking and the type of the typical cooler. Rods are to be kept in a dry flux coating work with properly, keeping only keep only as much rods as you need, storing them in a tight container such as a Lincoln plastic rod box, cast gasket screw cap. Alright, arc welding electrodes are also marked with the color code. Usually the flux coating in itself with a different color indicated as well with the marking dabs. Colors need to be in the tip. The E6011 was white flux coating color and a blue spot. E6013 is a dark tan with a brown spot, etc. Proper stored electricals critical performance. They're very susceptible to moisture. Must be stored to prevent and driving environment. Only their preserved mixture of the flux coating tenders loosen, flaking off the rod. Useful in large productions. Operation with the critical welding is done, and the rods are stored in space, even with the keep them constant with 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Most ensure that they are dry, only enough that they would be used in a few hours and removed only one time from the oven. It's in a home shop situation, but only as much variety as you think you need with the keep of the round unspeakable pounds project. Few pound with each of the type of the normally you keep it in either sealable metal can, plastic bag for the distant inside with the distant of the moisture absorbing the compound stuff that will also be needed with the packed tea bag with the electronic component with the camera equipment. You can save these bags whenever you get the new electrical goodies. These bags can dry out in the oven for a short while, then put them in a container holding the welding rods. If you have a bigger project in mind, but you need a project only trash for the welding supply, do not keep any large quantities around. We have seen various methods used by welders to keep electrodes, include racks, custom built metal tubes with screw caps. If you have reviewed any of the above introduction to arc welding, you should have a good idea now whether it will be suitable to particular welding. It can be both easy to learn, challenging, simple, or complicated. It can produce the result of farm grade, where strength is primary, automotive quality, and atomic reactor quality advantage with similar operation, low maintenance, low initial cost. Also, not considered cost for rewiring with 220 volt and if necessary, and the unmatched ability to weld outdoors without being effective in the wind, making it suitable for structural steel, construction pipelines, iron fence work, and farm repairs, as well as being the best choice of welding, repairing thickness materials. Alright, 429. These are the LTC portable AC power sources. Lightweight, offers up to 90 amps of the ST90i, right, and the 130 amps on the ST140i. Unlike most of the arc welders, there is a DC and can even be set up with the torch portable adapter run with the TIG torch today, available to 110 and 120 volt input. Alright, 130. The Eastwood Company makes a lot of equipment supplies the auto restoration and the small 110 volt arc welder. The maximum 70 volt delivers a 10% duty cycle, so you won't be welding any bridges together, but only in weighs 26 pounds, extremely portable, welds 3/16 of an inch. Alright, the auto manufacturer builder cars with a spot welding machine, either Eastwood Company spot welder gun. You can repair only on one of the same way. The replaceable electrodes last 60 to 100 welds. The spot welder is self-contained mini arc welder designed to join sheet metal panels to auto body work. 5. MIG metal into inert gas welding.